Hey y'all, I'm Rylan. Welcome to my channel. October is officially over, so I'm here to share with y'all the 12 books that I read this past month. Honestly, super excited about how well I did overall, especially because I had 2 5-star reads, which I have not had since July. So after like 3 months of reading books again, I finally found some 5-star reads, and I am very ecstatic about it, honestly. 2 of my favorite books of 2024 have been read in the month of October, and I've also just had some very fun reads overall, and I'm very excited to share them with you guys today. As I just said, not even 30 seconds ago, I read 12 books in the month of October. 7 of them were physical, 2 of them were NetGalley, 2 of them were Kindle Unlimited, 1 was from my library, and then 9 of these books also had audiobook accompaniments that I listened to while reading them or looking at them physically. So a lot of different formats I read this month. Very excited about the KU reads as well as the NetGalley reads that I was able to squeeze into this month while doing some vlogs and book review videos and things like that. My average rating for the month of October was only a 3.375, which is not great, but I did have some 5-star reads, so like it's okay, I'll still take it. I had 3 books that were 2 stars or 2.5 stars. I had 4 books that I rated 3 stars, 3 books that I rated 4 stars, and then 2 books that I rated 5 stars. So overall, some really great picks. Did have some duds in there, unfortunately, but I can't complain too much if I'm being honest. The way that I do my monthly wrap-ups now is I do a very quick 1 or 2 sentence synopsis, and then I share quick thoughts, normally 3 or 4, and then I move on to the next book. I also have a lot of books from this past month that I read for vlogs or book review videos, so if I did that for those books, I might not talk about them as much, and I'll probably just point you to the vlog or the video where you can watch my thoughts on those books more extensively, but I will share a little bit about every book that I read. That way y'all can see here what I read this month and how I felt about it. I'm just going to go in order chronologically of what I read from the 1st of the month through the 31st, starting with Alice Feeney's Good Bad Girl. This book was on my fall TBR video that I made. I don't normally make TBRs, might try doing it again in the new year, but this book was on my fall TBR and I read it almost immediately after uploading that, so very excited about that. I read it during the first couple of days of October. I actually think I might have started it in September, but read most of it in the first couple of days of October. But this is a thriller about 3 women who are seemingly linked through secrets and mysteries from the past, and those mysteries come to light when a murder occurs in this nursing home, and the 3 women are kind of brought together through that happening, I guess is the best way that I can share it. I do think that with a lot of these books, especially the thrillers, it's easier to go in, or it's better to go in not knowing too much. I personally like to read my books blind, or to go into my books blind, so I don't know too much about them when I first start. That way I have less expectations and just there for the roller coaster. So I gave this book 4 stars. The chapters were super short, super easy to read. Alice Feeney, I think, is kind of known for that. Very much appreciate how her books often have pretty short chapters. POVs were very interesting. Each character had a very different voice and very different motivations, and I thought it was very fun to get to follow all of them, and there were some pretty interesting twists in this book as well that I ended up really liking. Next, I read How I'll Kill You by Ren DeStefano for a reading vlog. I also gave this book 4 stars. This is about triplet serial killers who are in a new town scouting out their next mark, but the girl, the sister who is kind of leading this one, is having second thoughts about what she is supposed to do, because maybe she's falling in love with the guy that she is supposed to kill at the end of her 6-month relationship with him. This book was super addictive. I binged like 62% of it, I think, in one day, and that was pretty crazy. The concept of it was super fascinating. I love a good serial killer fiction novel, but I don't often read women serial killers, and I really don't read triplet serial killers ever. So just honestly, that idea was very fascinating to me from the beginning, and is very much what drew me in and made me want to keep reading it. Just from the very start, I wanted to know what was going to happen. I do wish, however, that we'd gotten to see the other sisters' POVs, especially because they're kind of hiding some things, but also want their sister to succeed in all areas of life. But there's definitely some stuff that they don't tell each other. So I think it would have been very cool to see the sisters' POVs, but I understand also why we just got the one. I read that for my Pink Thrillers reading vlog that I'll tag above. Next, I read Spookily Yours by Jennifer Chipman. This book was on Kindle Unlimited. I gave this book 2.5 stars. I also read this book for a reading vlog. It was for a Halloween romance vlog. And again, gave this book 2.5 stars. Did not love it, unfortunately, but it was a pretty quick read once I finally got into it. But this is a book about a witch who finds herself befriending a demon when she goes to adopt a cat, and the cat is not actually a cat, and she has to help him undo the curse that has been put on him that has made him turn into a cat. Lots of cats and lots of talking to cats in this book, which was a little bit weird to me, and I share more about my thoughts on that in the vlog if you want to check it out. But this book was a little bit tricky for me because it is considered a novella at barely 200 pages, I want to say, and so there was very little world building, and I felt like I had to make a lot of assumptions about the world because I was provided very little context, especially when it came to the demon realm and what that whole thing was about, especially with the sister side plot. That's all I'll say without spoiling any of that. The chemistry was also pretty bland between the characters, I thought, Damien and Willow, but their ending was cute and I did grow to like them by the time we got to the end, but it kind of took a long time to get to that point. The next book that I read was Horror Movie by Paul Tremblay, and I gave this book 2 stars. I just uploaded a video talking about my thoughts on this book. If you want to check it out, it's just a single book review video, but gave this book 2 stars. Unfortunately, I did not like it, but this is about a guy who was a part of a horror movie back right post college, and he was asked to be in the movie and to play the role of the thin kid. And years later, a lot of weird things had happened regarding the movie, and so people have found out about it through YouTube postings and things like that, and they want the movie to be remade. So he's asked in the present time to play the role of the thin kid, but not as much as he had been the first time, but to kind of like have a role in it because he was one of the original cast members and one of the only ones who is still living. The audiobook carried this one for me. I was very confused. I get very confused by like paranormal things sometimes in books, and this one definitely like hinted at that throughout it, but I wasn't quite sure what was actually going on. I also thought that because this is so much of a screenplay book, like there are screenplay scenes in it, it was kind of hard to follow along and be able to picture what's happening because like there's not a lot of backstory because you're reading it just like on a scene page, on a screenplay, and so it's kind of hard to like really be able to place myself in the book and be able to understand the characters and why, especially when it came to the movie scenes, why they were doing what they were doing, because I just couldn't understand just based off reading a screenplay. Again, so I thought it was confusing. That's my second point that I wrote down in my notes. And then finally, the main character was horrendous in my opinion. I'm all for unlikable / unreliable characters in the thriller and horror genres, but this one is very over the top and I just could not get behind that, and I was very annoyed a lot of the time whenever he spoke. So there's that. I did want to try to get through some backlisted books this month. Good Bad Girl was a backlisted book for me. I also read If I Die Tonight by Allison Galen, which was also a backlisted book, and I ended up giving this one 3 stars. This is about a high school boy who is thought to be behind a hit and run that killed one of his classmates, but the story goes deeper than everybody thinks. It was a little bit slow to catch my attention, but it did. By the end of it, I was able to fly through it pretty quickly and was interested in what was going on. I also thought that the mid-chapter POV switches were a little bit confusing and kind of removed me from the story because I'd have to go back and figure out where I was and like figure out when the character swap happened because I didn't always notice it right away. But there was a plot twist that I did not see coming regarding the murder, and I thought that was very interesting. Next, I read Clock Striker Volume 1. This is a, I think, manga turned graphic novel series. I got a gifted copy of book 2, so of course I wanted to read book 1 first because it is a continuing series. But this is a graphic novel about a young girl who wants to be involved in this secret scientific group, but is not believed in by the people around her because she has a disability, but she really wants to prove them wrong and help save the world. I like this one. I gave it 3 stars. It was okay. Some of the storyline is kind of confusing, and I think that might have had to do with the art and just how the art was played out. I did think that it was very pretty, but some of the scenes were just kind of confusing and I couldn't quite figure out what was going on, especially when there were explosions happening. I didn't quite understand what was happening. But it did make me want to read Volume 2. I was invested enough in Volume 1 that I wanted to continue. So after I read Volume 1, I read Volume 2, which was the one that was gifted to me. Very pretty art. You do have some like colored pages to start the chapter headers, or the chapter introductions, I guess. but I did like the art style a lot. Thought it was very fun and accessible. I liked it just about the same amount. Still a little bit confused on some parts, but I do feel like I followed this one better than the first one, so I also gave it 3 stars. Next was my first 5-star read in 3 months, which happened to be Haunted Ever After by Jen DeLuca, which I also read for that Halloween romance reading vlog if you want to see my very full thoughts on this book. But this is about Nick and Cassie. Cassie's new to town and believes that her house is haunted, and learns that this whole town is kind of haunted, but like not by bad ghosts. Not all of them are bad ghosts at least, but she wants to find out the truth about the woman who lived in this house and why things in her house just aren't right, and to see if she can find out the truth, because according to the ghost that has communicated with her, they're not getting her story right. So you have a cozy mystery happening, but you also have a romance budding between Nick and Cassie as they get to know each other in this small town romance. I'm obsessed with this book, honestly. I thought it was such a perfect blend of mystery and romance. I love the inclusion of the ghosts and their communication. We had a really funny ghost that I just could not help but chuckle at whenever he appeared. I loved the slow burn aspect to this book. I don't always get behind that very much. I think it can be frustrating at times, but Jen DeLuca did a perfect job with it. I thought that Nick and Cassie were both so sweet, and I loved their development as individuals and also together, and I really want to see more books in this series being out soon, because there's one couple in here that I really want to see more of, and I hope that's who we get next. But 5 stars, loved it. You can see my full thoughts in my reading vlog that I did for this one. After reading Haunted Ever After for that vlog, I also read If I Stopped Haunting You by Colby Wilkins, and I gave this book 2 stars. This book is about feuding writers who go on this writing retreat and end up having some chemistry and falling in love, but also being involved in kind of this ghost hunt thing that's going on in the castle. I had a lot of issues with this book in the end, unfortunately. The setting was immaculate. I love gothic vibes. The chemistry was a little bit forced for me, and by the end they ended up being sweet, but I feel like Neil did not get the justice that he deserved just based off what Penelope did to him prior to their feud, and I didn't love that, like, that whole thing happened. And I also just thought that the chemistry was and the ghost element in this book was a little bit confusing to me, especially when it came to how they got rid of the ghosts, I think, or how they confronted the ghosts. I didn't quite understand that part, so unfortunately this book was not a win for me. 3 more books, and they were all pretty good. Next, I read Morbidly Yours by Ivy Fairbanks. Easy 5-star read. This might be what turns me into a Friends to Lovers person, because I'm obsessed, and I've thought about this book every single day since finishing it. But this is a Friends to Lovers romance that takes place in Ireland, I think, between Callum, who is super shy and he owns a funeral home, and then Lark, who has moved to their town for a job opportunity at an animation studio, and they end up becoming really good friends. And then he falls in love with her and she falls in love with him, but she said that she didn't want to get married again because of what happened in her past. And so you get a lot of very sweet moments between these characters, a very good amount of conversation regarding hard things, and some funny moments and a lot of spice. And overall, I just am obsessed with this book, and I want to read more from this author, so let's go. But I did annotate this one as well as Haunted Ever After, and truly, I love these 2 books. My favorite books, 2 of my favorite books from 2024 so far. That list is pretty short. I think I have like 5 books on there. So these 2 books will definitely be popping up again at the end of this year in my favorite books wrap up from this year, but 5-star reads, so freaking good. Next, I read Phantasma by Kaylee Smith. I will also be doing a full book review for this book, so keep an eye out for that. It should be coming out a week from today's video. That's uploaded right now, this one. But this is a romantasy book about Ophelia, who has a sister who goes missing, and so she finds herself becoming a part of this game that has come to town called Phantasma. And at the very beginning of this game, she meets a stranger, and his name is Blackwell, and he ends up wanting to help her, but she has to help him in return, and their chemistry is just off the charts. You have action and spice and romance and mystery going on in this one, and lies and secrets, and it was really good. I do think it took me a little bit to get my feet into. I feel like I use that phrase a lot when it comes to my books, but it did take me a little bit to get into the book. But once I was super fascinated by everything. I thought that the idea of the games being like the 7 levels of hell was super fascinating. Kind of gave me Hunger Games vibes, but not, but kind of. Like, I really did get that vibe from this book. And I just was really curious to see what would end up happening. I wasn't quite sure if this couple would get their happy ending. They do, but I thought that their chemistry was so good. The spice was honestly amazing, And I just think that books like this make me want to keep reading romantasy, which I haven't since finishing this one, but I do want to. I want to find some good books that kind of have similar vibes or aesthetics to this one and try them, because honestly this book was so much fun. I flew through it really quickly as well. Like, my copy from Book of the Month is almost 500 pages and I read it in a couple of days. It really was not a hard read to get into and I really enjoyed it. So 4 stars to Phantasma. And then finally in October, I finished this a couple of hours before the month's end. I read The Boyfriend by Frida McFadden. Honestly, I don't know why I keep reading Frida McFadden. I gave this book 3 stars, so it was fine, but I've only had 1 5-star read from the author and everything else has been 3 stars or less, so it's fine. But this is about a woman who meets a man who seems a little too perfect and a little bit off sometimes, and is he a serial killer? I don't know. But we follow both the past and the present timelines from 2 different perspectives, which I thought was very interesting. This is a very quick book to get through, as most of Frida McFadden's books are. They are very bingeable, I will say. The twist is very interesting, but I feel like the writing was super cringe and like it wasn't a great thriller compared to other ones that I've read, especially this month. So 3 stars to The Boyfriend. I did like it enough. I'm gonna keep reading her books because I don't know why, but I am, probably because everybody else is. But there is my Frida McFadden book for the month, because I think I've read something by her a lot of months this year, almost every month this year I think, that I have actually been reading. So we gotta keep it up, obviously. Those are the 12 books that I read in the month of October. Really great reading month overall. I cannot complain. I had a lot of fun with a lot of these books and found 2 new favorites, which is amazing. If you've read any of these books, feel free to comment down below and let me know your thoughts on them. Or if you read any really great books in the month of October, please share your thoughts on those as well. I love adding more books to my TBR. But that's all that I have for today's video. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next one.